All right. Hello. Good afternoon. It is already Tuesday at 5. These weeks are flying by. Um, I'm Dr. Melissa Bachelor, and in case this is the first time you're tuning in, I am a nurse and a practitioner with over 25 years of experience caring for older adults and their families. And on today's live, I'm going to be talking through, actually, over the next two lives, I'm going to be talking about the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. But today we're just going to tackle the first five. And what I found is that you can see the warning signs and you can read that list, but sometimes it's hard to actually recognize those warning signs in someone else's behavior. And so today we're going to talk about not only the warning sign, but how those behaviors actually show up in that person's life and in their behavior. And I've got a checklist to share with you. I printed mine off here for you. And there's also a guide, but my guide, I don't have a color printer here, so it's black and white. But if you go to my website, MelissaBPhD.com, it will show you /join. That will take you to AgeWise U, and you can become an insider for free, and both the guide and the checklist are there for you. And in a couple of weeks, I'll be launching a Dementia 101 course, and these resources will be part of that course as well as some other things. So we've got some folks here. Welcome to the live stream today. And all right, we'll go ahead and get started. So the first warning sign is when memory loss disrupts your daily life. And one of the interesting things about this, that is probably one of the first things that people will notice in a person who has like a traditional Alzheimer's type of dementia, but it may not be the first thing that you see with some of the other forms of dementia. So this particular list is one that's been developed or it's been published also by, it models the Alzheimer's Association's 10 warning signs. And so I think a lot of times when you present the 10 warning signs, it's like, oh, well, I'll see memory loss first, then I'll see, challenges with their problem solving, on down the list. That's not necessarily true. So what you're doing is you're looking for each of these behaviors, and you may only see one, you may see two, but you're also not looking you're looking for a pattern of behavior. So just because somebody, forgets an important date or they repeat themselves occasionally, that's not, enough of a red alarm to think that person is developing Alzheimer's disease. Because actually cognition is like a spectrum. And so you can have some normal changes related to aging, which involve your memory, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have an Alzheimer's type of dementia or that memory loss will ever progress. So a warning sign is when people forget important dates, or they may need more memory aids than before. And normal aging is when you just occasionally forget somebody's name or an appointment. And I'll tell you, if I didn't have my calendar, I would forget a lot of things. So making to-do lists. But this is when someone is using those things more than they usually did. So how this might show up in somebody's daily life, it would show up, it might be that they are frequently forgetting recently learned information. So one of the things that can be confusing to people about Alzheimer's disease is they will say, well, they can tell me all these stories about, when they were young or when they were newly married, all these things that happened 34 years ago, they can tell me with great clarity, but they don't remember a conversation that we had yesterday, or they forgot that they told me something. And I know when we don't see our family and friends as much, sometimes we will repeat stories. My mom and I do this. She's getting used to me living closer to home and I see her more often. So, but she'll get halfway through the story and she'll say, have I told you this before? And I'm like, you have. And she's like, okay, well, yeah. So that is just a normal part of aging compared to, maybe someone who's repeating the same question or they're saying the same thing within a very short period of time, and they're not recognizing that they just said that. So again, you're looking for patterns of behavior, not just a one-off type of thing. Another behavior that might indicate somebody has memory loss is if they're losing or they're misplacing their keys or their glasses, and this is not something that they normally did, and then you find them in like a really weird place. They might begin to get lost in familiar places. And actually getting lost is probably one of the signs that we will see earlier, and it is an indication of memory loss. But this would be, typically out if somebody's out driving and they seem to get turned around, they don't recognize their landmarks as much. But a lot of older adults can, we call them rat tracks, where you drive from your house to the grocery store or to the bank. You have a very familiar path that you take all the time. It's when you get lost doing something like that, not necessarily trying to get someplace new. So those are just a couple of different behaviors you might see for memory loss. The second one is challenges in planning or problem solving. So this has to do with the executive function of our brain. And the executive planning part of our brain is the ability to plan and execute something. So are they able, so this might be something that you would see at work in a coworker, because you're used to them performing it a certain way, and then all of a sudden they're having trouble, organizing a meeting or getting the agenda together. It could be something, where the person's forgetting to pay their monthly bills. So some of the different behaviors, we just said that they might have trouble organizing daily tasks or creating an effective schedule. Therefore, they're missing deadlines. Maybe they're having trouble where you give them like 4 or 5 different steps to accomplish a certain task, and they have to come back after they've done the second step and ask you again, what were the other 3 things that you told me to do? I know some teenagers with the same problem. Another thing might be making impulsive decisions, maybe where they're not considering the consequence, or they're not able to problem solve. So one of the examples that I've shared before is like, maybe somebody has always been able to plan a trip, and they book the trip and they forget to book their hotel. And it's like, how could you have missed that critical part of the trip? So again, it's looking for patterns like that. And this may be another instance where someone's trying to complete a form, and historically they've been able to complete forms without a problem, and now they are. And so that could be recognized as a challenge in planning or problem solving. And with the little guide that I give you, I have like 10 different behaviors for each of these warning signs. And what you're supposed to do is write down the date and the behavior you actually see, so that you are keeping a track and you're looking for patterns. But this is also a document that you could take to your primary care provider. And, if the person that you're with, that you think they are the ones that have the memory problem, it might be easier to hand this to a provider instead of having a conversation in front of that person that is going to make them upset. So the third warning sign is difficulty completing familiar tasks at home or at work. And so this might show up as, having trouble making a shopping list, or maybe it's a recipe that they have prepared every year, for a certain holiday, and now they're missing like a key ingredient, and they're having a lot of trouble. They may make a lot more mistakes, or it might be taking them twice as long to complete a task that, you've known them for a long time, and they've been able to do it pretty rapidly, and now it's just taking longer. And it's almost like sometimes you can see like the wheels are churning, but they're just churning a lot slower. So again, it's just something to pay attention to. And they may get frustrated because they know, they're still aware of the fact that this is something that used to come very easily to them, and now it's a lot more challenging. And so you may see like an overall decline in their productivity at work, or maybe their house was once very well kept and now it's just not. And it's just because, they're doing the best that they can, and they're doing all that they can. The fourth warning sign is confusion with time or place. And so this is when you forget either where you are or how you got there. And that's different than normal aging, where you may forget like what day of the week it is, but then you can figure it out by looking at a calendar, or you can kind of backtrack to say, okay, that's right, today is Tuesday. But this may show up in behavior as someone who is starting to miss their doctor's appointments, or maybe they're showing up at an appointment on the wrong date and time, and this is happening like repeatedly. And they may even tell you, that I'm really confused about what day it is. And this one, I sometimes give people a little bit more slack on, because a lot of people, if they retire, they come out of the workforce, they lose their schedule. Most of us kind of live by a calendar. And, at a certain age, if you're not working anymore, the calendar becomes less of a driver. But you should know what year it is, what month it is, and what season it is. But again, helping someone to figure out some way to help themselves get reorganized if they've recently made that transition. And when you clarify what the date and time or year it is with them, they can become very anxious, or they might get really upset with you. Or they may become upset if they're faced with a different challenge or something that they haven't done before. And then the fifth sign is trouble understanding visual images or spatial relationships. And this warning sign typically will show up as like trouble judging distances. So I know, this might be where you go over to a loved one's home and you're looking at their car bumper and it's kind of scraped up in the front and the back. That can happen. Or maybe they're having trouble. You're talking about, well, we're going to go over to, this restaurant, and it's a new restaurant. So maybe it's like, a newer restaurant, and they can't grasp onto the name of that new restaurant. But if you say, remember, it's where, the Benningons used to be. And they're like, oh, okay. So you actually want to go to the Verizon store, but they don't know that the Verizon store used to be they know that the Verizon store used to be Bennigan's. And when you tell them the older place, then they know where you're going, but they're not able to kind of overlay the fact that the Benningons is now the Verizon store. They may have trouble recognizing familiar faces. And so, again, that's the visual images. And then the spatial relationships is trying to get from one place to the next. So another example of that would be if I were to tell you from wherever you're sitting or standing or writing right now, to think about your bedroom and how would you go through your house to get to the kitchen? Or even I could ask you, like, if you were at your parents' house, how did you get from the kitchen back to your bedroom? And most people can track that through kind of visually. And so that's what visual spatial relationships, what that concept means. So they may have errors in judgment. They may misplace objects or bump into furniture. Or they may begin to struggle with tasks that require a lot of hand-eye coordination. So maybe threading a needle, playing the piano, things like that. So again, this week we're just going to go through the first 5 because I'm trying to keep these lives kind of short. But if you go to MelissaBPhD.com/join, you can become an HYSU insider for free, and you'll find the 10 warning signs checklist. And this really just has like the warning sign and a definition of what it means compared to normal aging. And then there's the guide, which has a prettier cover. I only printed out the front part, but it says 10 warning signs. And the guide actually has the same stuff that the checklist has, but then there are 10 different behaviors that you could look for, that you could just put a little check mark by. And then you can write down the date that this happens and a brief explanation, because again, you're looking for patterns of behavior, but this is a nice way to very succinctly talk to a provider about what you're seeing. But it gives you examples of all 10 of the warning signs. It gives you 10 different behaviors that could be an indication that the person is beginning to experience memory issues. I do have other podcasts about how Alzheimer's disease and other dementias are diagnosed. So that you want to be sure that you get in to see your primary care provider and have that person completely worked up, because sometimes memory issues can be because somebody is depressed. Maybe there's something off with their thyroid. Maybe they're anemic. I mean, even being constipated can change your brain and your ability to think. So So I hope that you find this to be a helpful tip. You can leave a comment in the comments below, wherever you're listening to this, probably YouTube, because these are all YouTube lives. So they're not being disseminated on other platforms. And I guess I'll hang out just a few minutes. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. Otherwise, we will finish up this week. And when we come back next week, I'll go through behaviors 6 through 10. And so we'll finish up the conversation then. But I do appreciate you guys being here with me today. So I'll wait just a few minutes. Thank you. That's okay. I'm not sure if that's, well, Cheatham. I think that's how you say your name. But thank you for that. Yeah, and if there's anything that you ever would like for me to do, to cover in a future live or on a podcast, you can always, you can email me, MelissaBPhD@gmail.com. You can leave a comment here. I am trying to get better about checking my YouTube comments. You can follow me on social media. So those are a lot of different ways that you can get up with me. And I've started 2 different membership options. So next week, these lives will probably be for my elite members here on YouTube. So if you look at the HYSU MVP and you're like, I'm familiar enough with her content that I don't feel like I need to have everything compiled for me, you can become a YouTube MVP or elite. But if you would like if you enjoyed this content, if you become an HYSU MVP, when you click on the Alzheimer's content, it's actually broken down by recognizing early warning signs, what to do. And then it goes into early, middle, late stage. There are caregiver tips. There's financial caregiving tips. There's brain health tips. And then other content around aging, ageism, brain health. But with 180 episodes, sometimes it's hard to find related content when you're just see this eternal sea of videos. And so that's what HYSU was developed for. But some people might just like being a YouTube member. So happy to have you as a member either way. Oh, and there's a Facebook group. And this one is called This Is Getting Old, Moving Towards an Age-Friendly World. You're welcome to join me for that. And that's kind of it. So I guess we will log off. But thank you very much for joining me. And I'll see you guys next week.